So kitchen cacciatore. I wish I had a little bit of an Italian accent. There's a little old man that I watch on Facebook that does a cooking show right from his kitchen in New Jersey. But he is all Italian. Everything he says, his hand gesture, it's kind of fun. It's a good show to watch. Every time I listen to him, I said, I got to do my cooking show with a little bit of an Italian accent, but that's not happening. So we'll kind of go along without it. So kitchen cacciatore. This recipe was chosen. I like it. It's one of my favorites. When I'm choosing recipes, you all have it. Please follow along. I'm only going to make minor tweaks to it, not my usual, let's take a recipe apart. But on this recipe, there's a couple things I really like. I like to exclusively use chicken thighs, and I also like this recipe because it calls for capers. Not all chicken cacciatories call for capers. You might not have capers. If you don't, let me encourage you to get some capers. They are a wonderful addition in Italian cooking, one of my favorites to add to some simple recipes as well as some very exotic recipes, but it's a go-to in our house. So basically, in this recipe, I'm substituting 6 chicken thighs versus 4 chicken thighs and 2 chicken breasts. Here's the reason why, or 2 reasons. One is I like chicken thighs better than I like chicken breasts. I've kind of switched to that. But also, this recipe, if you use both proteins of the chicken, you kind of got to watch how you cook the chicken breasts and how you cook the chicken thighs. The thighs are going to cook quicker, and that's fine. But then you got to make sure that you cook your chicken breasts for full cook for another 10 minutes. So my thought is, let's just all do chicken thighs, knock it out. That's what I have. That's what I thought. That's what I'm ready for. So we're gonna make that as one of the switches. I've already floured, dressed, and salt and peppered my thighs just for the convenience of time and prep. I will not cook this during the show unless I'm able to. I might not be able to, so I probably won't. But I'll show you how the recipe ends up going. I'm also going to talk about red peppers versus green peppers, onions, garlic, how to smash a piece of garlic, how to slice a piece of garlic for you. I've got my canned tomatoes, chicken broth, capers, which have already been mentioned. You can use fresh oregano if you want, just use a little less. The recipe calls for dry. I'm going to use dry. That's what I have as well. And that is the recipe. This is all done in a pan. You can also do it in the oven at 350 for about 50 minutes. Just make sure that the chicken thighs are running clear. I have done this in an Instapot. I have done it in the oven at 350 for 50 minutes. This recipe calls for it in a pan. It's very rustic. When you do it in a pan, so you don't have a lot of cleanup to do afterwards, I encourage you to use a lid, because one thing about tomato sauce when it gets warm is it bubbles. Those bubbles splash all over your kitchen stove. So let's go ahead and sprinkle some salt and pepper on the chicken thigh, and I'm going to turn my face into the camera so we can start getting this this baby started. All right, hopefully technology works. I have, and I'm just going to put a little bit of salt on it and a little bit of pepper. Now, you do this before you dredge it. I let mine sit for a little bit, but then you'll see the magic of TV. Wow, I've got 6 chicken thighs. So basically what I'm doing here is adding this one to it. And you can see the salt is melted in and the pepper is already on the top. And put in about a half of a cup of flour. And just go in there and dredge it in your bowl. You can also do this in a gallon Ziploc bag if you prefer to dredge that way. It's really up to you on how you want to do it. Now you see how it's all lightly coated? That adds to the crispiness and the skin of your dredged product. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in a large saute pan, heat it up, medium heat the olive oil. If you like olive oil, great. If you prefer, you can use any oil that has a high heat content. Olive oil, grape oil, canola oil, and all you're doing is putting them in there to saute. And I'm not going to scrunch this pan up. So then I'm going to put the lid on. I'm going to put it on the stove. I'd like to thank my executive producer also for my stove. It always works great. All right, so we've got the chicken pieces in the flour, lightly coated, shake it off. And now we're gonna put it in the pan, which it is, and it's gonna be basically on the oven here for a while. I'm gonna try to watch my clock so I don't overdo it. But let's prep the vegetables now that are gonna go into the chicken cacciatore. So I really want you to saute each side for about 5 minutes, medium heat. So I want you to cut up the onion, and it wants you to cut up the garlic and cut up the red pepper. So let's go ahead and do that. Today's tool is a sharpener. This is a great sharpener. I have it right next to my knife block, but it's got a coarse and a fine. So this tool is something I'm showing you. You can use and buy. If you've ever used a dull knife versus a sharp knife, you'll always want to have one of these close by. So all you're doing is taking your knife, going through the coarse, then through the fine, through the coarse, through the fine. It's very careful, very safe, and an easy thing. So that's your tool for the day, the sharpening blade that I use on a regular basis. So let's go ahead and cut up the onion and the bell pepper. Now here is a bell pepper. Now it calls for a red pepper, and I specifically went and got a red pepper. You will find they're a little bit more expensive, but they're sweeter. They usually are about the same size as a green pepper, but I like them. They're a little less potent and a little less just regular flavored pepper. The red one gives it a little bit more sweetness, and I actually kind of like it. So there's many ways to cut a pepper. I prefer to cut this way like this. And what you're seeing is, just scared my dog, is basically, I'm not worried about the seed because the seed is in the center of what I'm cutting. So it used to be that I would cut the top off, and that would be the way I would do my pepper. But this is really all you have left of the green or of the red pepper. You just take off this little part, and all of that is there, and you have one seed on the plate. So that is the best way, in my opinion, to cut a red pepper. So all you're going to do is make nice slivers. Throw it in your bowl because your chicken right now is cooking and you want that to cook without it being a part of the vegetable mix. Now this membrane right in here is fine to leave in when it's a green or red or yellow pepper. But if you're dealing with any pepper that has spice, i.e. a jalapeno, an Anaheim, this part along with where the seed is can be very potent. So my recommendation is when you're using a jalapeno or something else in a recipe to take that membrane out. Along with the membrane also goes the seed. So I think it's an important thing to remember. People say, oh, I hate peppers because they're so hot. These peppers are not, but if you do a jalapeno or an Anaheim pepper, those are a little bit hotter, and the membrane and the seeds are where the heat comes from. So now we have the red pepper sliced and diced, ready to go into the chicken when the chicken's ready. Here's your onion. I was fortunate that I tore off the skin already, preparation of TV. I cut off the first end here, but I'm gonna leave the root on until I'm done cutting the second part. So I cut off the top, that's where the green part is, or the other part that doesn't show roots, the opposite part. So all I do is I take it, hold it firmly because you don't want it to slip on you, and go down the center. Now you have two active halves. They're not separated. See, the root on the bottom keeps it all together. And all I do is I take my fingers and I bring them in. The reason I bring those in is I like my fingers. And when I type on the computer or being on my phone, real difficult to do when I have a damaged finger because I cut it off with a knife. Hard to cut when your fingers are drawn in and you're going along your knuckle. So I've made the slices. All I'm going to do here is make a quick down there. By the way, I can smell the chicken. It's starting to smell wonderful. And there you go. So there's the first half of the onion. If you like, now I cubed that. If you prefer, you can go like this. You get these nice little halves, I call them moons, little half moons. So that's without doing the dice. This is the dice, the little pieces. It's really what you prefer. So now I'm going to throw that in there. And I still have 5 fingers here, and I still have 5 fingers here. No cuts, no bruises, no lacerations, and no trips to the emergency room. I'm going to turn around and look at my chicken because I'm at the 5-minute mark. So bear with me for 1 second. So the chicken's cooking up nicely. Now, let's talk about a garlic. It calls here for several pieces of chopped garlic, 3 finely chopped. It's really up to you. But this is how garlic comes if you don't, have it already prepared in the store. So it's got a skin similar to a skin, maybe a little drier than an onion. But where do you get the cloves and how do you get the cloves? So you put it on a board that's secure. Just put your palm, and all of a sudden, voila, are the cloves of garlic. So it asks for 3. We like garlic in our house, so I will probably put out a couple extra, but that's what comes out of the bulb. So the big thing is the bulb, this is the cloves. So kind of a nice thing to have fresh garlic in your house, especially if you're in a house that likes fresh garlic. So what do you do with this clove when you got the skin on? Because the skin's fine, but you don't want that in your recipe. So all you do is to take the side of your knife and slap it down. And do that in all 3 to 6 pieces of cloves you have. And you'll see the magic here in a minute. Boy, does that smell good. Ladies and gentlemen, that is one great smell. That's gonna make a great kitchen chicken cacciatore. So now you've got it out of the clove, and see what happens? That skin just rolls right off. And all you're doing there is taking the skin off. There's your product. There is your clove. There's the skin that you just set aside. Boy, does this smell good. All right, so there's your byproduct. This is what goes in. See how I got my fingers up? I'm not causing myself any concern that I'm going to chop my finger off because I'm protecting myself. Using a very sharp, freshly sharpened knife, but I'm making sure that my fingers are out of the way entirely. This is no blood chicken cacciatore. So then I just put that in there. Boy, it smells great. And that is I'm gonna wash my hands. So there you have your peppers, your onions, and your garlic for the chicken cacciatore. That's really what makes the smell and separates it. So now all of a sudden it says, when you're cooking your medium-high chicken thighs, to make sure they're good salt and peppered and they're ready. So I'm gonna flip it one more time, and then I'm gonna add the bell pepper, onion, and garlic to the same pan and saute it over the medium heat for another 5 minutes. So the first 5 minutes were the chicken by themselves. Now that we've prepared the peppers, the onions, and the garlic, that's what goes in next. And then we're gonna do some fun things with some wine and some other things, but that's where we're at right now. Hold on. So there's your start to your recipe. So I have browned the chicken thighs, taking 5 minutes, and you can see how pretty those thighs look. Now, how did that happen? Well, you got a little olive oil in there. You also have a little bit of flour, salt, and pepper. That helps crisp up. These are real nice and crispy. It's almost like fried chicken, but not quite. But it adds a real nice texture to your meal. So I'm going to pretend we're on the stove, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add the peppers, the onions, and the garlic. And that goes into this recipe right here. So you can put 6 or 8, depends on how big your frying pan is. My executive producer and I, we like usually have 2 chicken thighs for whatever we're making. And, you know, chicken marsala, chicken piccata, chicken cacciatore, or just chicken breasts or chicken thighs. We usually each have 2. So what I'm doing now is I've got the sauteing of the onions, the peppers, and the garlic. And now I want to add 3/4 of a cup of a nice white wine. You want it to be dry. In the summer at our house, we like a glass of Pinot. It works out great. This calls for 3/4 of a cup. I got to be honest with you, I can't think of many recipes that I do in Italian that don't have some type of either red or white wine or Marsala wine. But in this case, it's just a simple white wine, dry. They always say, if you can't drink it, don't cook with it. I would agree with that. So you can get some great wines for under $6, $10. So go for it and add that to your recipe. So now we've added the white wine. Now we want to add, this would be on the stove right now, and you want to go ahead now and add to the chicken pieces and vegetables, you want to put in your sauce. Now, this is crushed sauce, 28 ounces. Now, you can use any variety of crushed tomato. I just happen to find this one at Kroger. On my click list, I bought it. It's all purpose. I use it. It's already skinned, crushed, seeded, ready to go. 28 ounces. Magically, I'm going to zip off the top. And there goes the 28 ounces. So it's looking really good. You're pretending that's on the stove. So now after you've added the tomatoes, you want to make sure that you go ahead and add the chicken broth to add to the simmer. And then we're going to add the capers. So what we want to do is take another 3/4 cup and add that in. Simple organic chicken broth, and then you're all set. There you go there. All right. So now we've added the tomatoes to the juice, broth, capers, and now let's do a little bit of oregano and capers. Now, I'm going to do the oregano first because I'm going to use the same part. This is the dry ingredient, so I'm going to do that. Now I'm going to use the wet ingredient. And why do I wait is because I don't want the wet ingredient to stick to the dry. So here's your capers. Oh, they're gorgeous. They smell, they're briny, salty, and they are a house favorite. So there you go. There's that. So now you've got just about all the components in here. You want to simmer it for 30 minutes. Why are you simmering it? Because you want to finish cooking the chicken and you want to finish cooking the vegetables. The vegetables, need to blend. And this is how it looks just before it starts all working together. But as you can see, the tomatoes have covered the chicken that we've already cooked. It's well on its way. The only ingredient that's really not on here yet is the basil, but you finish the dish with fresh basil and you'll see that when you're done. So all I do here is I turn around and I put it on the stove again. All right, we can unmute if we want, ask questions, but the dish is pretty well prepared and finished. So there's chicken cacciatore. In 30 minutes, it'll be finished.